What is the purpose of spirituality, and how are we going to be able to achieve universal consciousness in the future? And what exactly is universal consciousness, and what is spirituality? So all of these different questions kind of lends itself to a lot of big picture, like abstract thoughts that don't really make sense in the practical world. But it's these questions that humanity for all of existence have been seeking answers for. And what exactly is the purpose of all of this? And I think the whole purpose of human existence is to evolve consciousness. So what does that even mean? What is consciousness? Well, consciousness is the ability to perceive this external environment, your thoughts, your emotions in the internal environment, to be able to discern whether or not something is happening as planned in your head. It is the ability to have sensations, the ability to critically think, to rationalize. It is the foundation that allows us as a humanity to be able to have any sort of neurochemical processing, to be able to take in this reality and to make sense of it all. That is the framework. That is consciousness. The framework is consciousness. So what is spirituality? I think spirituality is when we get to a place in our consciousness where we detach from our ego. So our ego is all about me, is the thing that keeps us chained into this singular point of view, this singular perception. So me, that's navigating throughout the world, I have an ego that kind of keeps me grounded, but it also chains me to my own singular perception of the world, or this one singular consciousness. And the ego, it keeps you held down. So if I'm feeling pain or suffering, the ego is the thing that like keeps me in to realizing that like there isn't other people going through these problems, that it's all about me, that like the whole world is against me. Like the pain and suffering that I'm feeling is like the worst thing that's happening in the world, and it keeps us blinded to the reality is like everyone is going through pain and suffering in life. Life is hard. There's disasters going on around the world. So the ego is what prevents us from thinking open-mindedly, is the thing that kind of makes you feel like you are the only one in the world going through whatever negative thoughts that are running through your head. And the spirituality is what allows us to open our minds to this greater force, this greater possibility that everything is interconnected. It helps us see things from a greater, bigger vantage point and look down, and not like physically, but like be able to perceive that like, oh wow, everyone is going through the same struggle, and it's not just me, and the world doesn't revolve around me, but the fact is that I am a part of the whole. And universal consciousness is this idea that everyone that has consciousness and everything in existence with consciousness is in balance and interconnected with one another in some way, shape, or form. And you can look at this from a very physical, scientific standpoint, like biology or physics, like atoms. Atoms is the building block of everything in existence that makes up this world. And maybe consciousness is the subjective particle that makes up all of the perception of the world. So physics, being the atom, is the objective building block framework, and consciousness is the building block of subjective perception of our external reality, internalizing it and makes sense of the world. And it lends itself to a panpsychist approach where maybe different forms of existence have different levels of consciousness. and that everything in existence is working together towards the universal consciousness being evolved as a whole. But maybe like me, I have a higher consciousness, or not me, but like humanity has a higher consciousness than maybe a rock does. But a rock is still having some sort of degree of consciousness, and maybe a mouse or a hawk has different levels of consciousness. But at the end of the day, we're all kind of in this together, because you can't totally disconnect yourself from consciousness. We are all interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And to go back to like, what is the point of spirituality? Well, the point in terms of like going through the day-to-day struggle, what it allows us to do is be open-minded to the possibility that maybe like the world isn't all about you, and that what you're suffering through and what you're feeling, these negative thought patterns, that to be able to disconnect or get yourself out of that thing, to be able to get out of that suffering, looking towards the spirituality, looking towards whether it's God or Allah or whatever higher being there is out there, it helps us get out of that negative thought pattern, to look at the bigger picture and realize that things aren't as bad as they seem, or maybe that it's natural. The force of God allows us to have this perception that's like, it makes you humble. It gets you out of all of the 7 deadly sins and all of these like negative hardships that you're facing, and be able to conceptualize it in a different way, in a way that allows you to see that all of the things that happen in your life is for a reason. That all of the things, whether it's like going through a breakup, whether it's getting a divorce, whether it's like losing your job, or even like right now with this pandemic, like it helps you realize that, okay, yeah, it sucks right now, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that all of this that's happening is for a reason, and that even if I, myself, my ego is suffering, that there's maybe other people that are being able to learn from this and grow, and as a whole we're all evolving. Like you, if you go through a breakup, it's having the big picture open-mindedness to realize that, okay, yeah, it sucks now, but maybe later down the road I could be of wisdom for someone else, to be able to help them in their life later on in life. And that it's not just about you, it's about us as a whole of humanity, that we're all in this together and we're all evolving towards this higher form of consciousness. And that's what spirituality lends itself to. It's what helps us. It's grounding, but it's also like evolving at the same time. And it's just an incredible thing to be a part of. And the only way we can open our eyes to receive that sense of wisdom is by opening yourself up to consciousness and getting out of the box that is ego.